Get going. So good evening, everyone. I'm Dennis Reardon, president of Mononkatuk Audubon Society, and welcome to this evening's program, Japan in Winter. Mononkatuk wishes to honor the indigenous communities native to the chapter area, including the Pagusset, Wepawag, Quinnipiac, Tutakit, Mononkatuk, and Hammonasset people. As we advocate for conservation of land and its wildlife, we're indebted to the work of Native and Indigenous people who cherished the land for thousands of years before European colonization. A couple of upcoming events. Tuesday, December 10th, which is just in 2 weeks, Wild Stories from the History of Bird Migration Research. That should be pretty cool. Saturday, January 4th is the Christmas bird count. And then on Tuesday, January 14th, Rob LaFrance from Audubon, Connecticut will describe the legislative priorities for the 2025 General Assembly. And you can sign up for all of those on the website. So I'd like to welcome back one of our favorite presenters, Gina Nickel. We always are excited to take one of her virtual trips abroad with a sunrise birding tour. And this evening, we're going off to Japan in winter.
Yes, we are. Yes, we
Great to
are.
have you here.
Thank you. Thanks, Dennis. That was very kind. Um, about 5 or 6 weeks ago, I realized that on the original date of this program, I was leaving for Bolivia the next morning at 3 a.m. and Dennis graciously changed the date to tonight for me to do this program for you. So I really appreciate your flexibility. And it's always a pleasure to be here. And thanks everyone for joining in tonight. I know it's a busy time of year, so I really do appreciate you coming to listen to what I have to say. And I believe the greeting is konnichiwa in Japanese, so hello. This program tonight is based on a couple of trips that I personally did to Japan, one in December of 2017 and another one right before the pandemic in February of 2020. And since then, we've been running some more trips to Japan in winter with Birds, Wildlife, and Nature, which is our affiliate company in England. And it is a very special place to go. So that's where I'm going to take you tonight. I'm going to try and share my screen now. See if this will work. This one.
Good.
Okay, and then
There we go. Excellent.
start the slideshow. And I'm also going to take off my video because I told Dennis that I have some videos in this program and I'm just going to try and save bandwidth. So I'll be here talking, but you might not see me until the end of the talk. And hopefully that will help you to see everything else that's coming up on the screen. Okay, so let's
And if during the talk you have questions, you can put them in the chat, and if they come at the end, we'll unmute people to ask their questions. So
Okay, that sounds
thanks.
great. Thank you. So yes, Japan in winter. We're approaching winter here, and Japan is approaching winter, and it's a very, very special place with lots of wildlife spectacles to see if you can get there in winter. And one of my dreams is to get back to Japan in spring. So hopefully that'll happen in the next few years, and I'll have a talk about that. So let's see if this will work. Yeah, can you see my map now? We're on our way. I just want to show you where we're talking about tonight. We're here up here in Connecticut, or I'm in Connecticut. You're from all over the place. But we're talking about this island nation of Japan, this long string of nearly 7,000 islands actually in Japan, and that's where we're going tonight. And just as we get started, I'll point out that the northern part of Japan is quite far north. It's actually almost alpine in nature, and the southern part of Japan is almost subtropical. And so it's quite a diverse island nation with lots to see. Here's a closer view of the map of Japan, and there's sort of 5 main islands that we visited, most all of them on these trips. And they're the big islands. Of course, there's nearly 7,000 islands, but some of those are just little rock outcroppings, but many of them are inhabited. And the land area is just over 145,000 square miles. Japan itself, the country, stretches about 1,900 miles from north to south. And this can give you an idea of how it compares with the United States. It's actually a little bit smaller than California. And I don't like this overlay because this part of Japan should be way up here around Toronto, but we'll figure something out there. It's also in the Ring of Fire, which you may have heard about, that area all along the west coast of the US, around the Pacific Ocean, that's highly seismic in activity. It has a lot of earthquakes and volcanoes. And again, here we are in Japan right here. So it has a lot of seismic activity in Japan. It's the 4th largest island country in the world with over 18,000 miles of coastline. And so it's stunningly beautiful with all that coastline. And most of the land inland is mountainous and forested. So it really is a stunning country to visit. And visiting there in winter, it's stick season like it is here in Connecticut now. The leaves have fallen from the trees, but it's still pretty beautiful. And I hope you'll get that from some of the pictures that I'm going to show you. If you've ever been to Japan, you know it's a land of culture, both traditional and modern culture. And this is Steve and I. In one of the hotels we stayed at, they gave us kimonos to wear. So we took them up on it before sitting down to one of the many incredible meals that we had. So there we are trying to do our best to honor the Japanese. The culture is quite unique. You don't wear shoes inside of the house. You take your shoes off at the door, and then you take your inside slippers off to go into the bathroom. One of the traditions is bathing naked together, which we didn't do, but it is something that people do in Japan. Bowing to each other is very important. And of course, the Japanese are very, very polite. They're known for that. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is what it's like to travel in Japan, the birds and other wildlife that are there in winter. And some of these creatures are only there in the winter season. They head north during the breeding season. There's some amazing wildlife spectacles. And I always have a famous person in my talk. Sometimes it's Diana Ross or Angelina Jolie, but who's the famous person that's going to be in this talk? And he's coming up very quickly. So when you fly to Japan, you can do a 14-hour nonstop flight from New York and arrive in Tokyo. And Tokyo is in the shadow of Fujisan, Mount Fuji, which is about 65 miles away, but that's how big it is. And so you can see it from Tokyo. Fujisan is over 12,000 feet high. And so living under Fujisan in the greater Tokyo area, there are 37.5 million people and about 14 million people in the city proper. It's a very modern city, a very bustling city. But as soon as we get there, we get out into the wilds. And the first thing we do is take a bullet train up to Karazawa, which is the first stop on our tour. And you may have heard about the bullet train. It's been around since 1964, 60 years. It travels at 200 miles an hour, so it's a very efficient way to get people around the country. But you have to be ready for the bullet train. If you want to get on the bullet train, you better be at the door when that door opens and get yourself and your luggage onto the train within the 30 seconds that the doors open, because it's gone. It's on its way very quickly. So it's a very efficient way of transportation, but you have to be ready for it. And where we're going is from Tokyo here up to Karazawa. That's our first stop. It's about 200 miles, I guess, from Tokyo. And that is the place where my famous person, John Lennon, spent summers. He actually spent the last 4 summers of his life in Karazawa. It's a popular summer tourist area as well as a ski area in winter. And you can visit the French bakery that John Lennon enjoyed. But we're looking at the outdoors. What kind of wildlife can we see around Karazawa? And the habitat is mixed deciduous forest with a few evergreens mixed in. And so it looks like this, again, stick season. But all around the trees, we can see these groups of mistletoes, which is a parasitic vine that grows on other plants. And mistletoes form berries, which are the food of one of the first targets that we want to see in Karazawa, and that's the Japanese waxwing. The Japanese waxwing actually breeds in Russia and comes down to Japan for the winter, and they're a very beautiful bird. You probably recognize this as looking like maybe our cedar waxwing or a Bohemian waxwing, but this one has red tail tips, and so it's quite a unique one. And it goes in mixed with Bohemian waxwings. So you're looking at these flocks that are going around looking for berries to eat. And you want to pick out the one that doesn't have the yellow tips, because that's Bohemian waxwing, the one that has the red tips. And it's very hard to see in this picture. But here's a close-up. The Japanese waxwing with the red tail tips and the Bohemian waxwing with the yellow tail tips. And so we get our first target fairly easily. But I remember chasing these flocks of birds around the towns because the towns had not only the mistletoe in the trees, but also these crabapple trees and things. And these are birds that eat fruit in the winter. So it was kind of fun to catch up with them. We're heading toward what's called the snow monkey town, which I'll talk about in a minute, but we're passing these open waters. Depending on the weather, sometimes the waters stay open and large flocks of ducks come in, including ones that we recognize, of course, mallard ducks, and these are northern pintails. There'll be Eurasian widgeons and sometimes shovelers and other birds in there, but we're checking out all of the birds that we can see, all the ducks, and this special yellow-billed, spot-billed duck is one of them. It looks like a black, American black duck, but you see the bill is jet black with that yellow tip, so it's called a spot-billed duck. And in with the spot-billed duck is the beautiful smew duck. And smew is just the name of it, S-M-E-W. It's one of the prettiest ducks, I think. It's beautifully black and white. This is a male. And it's a diving duck, very similar to hooded merganser. In fact, it's related to mergansers, and you can probably see that with the shape. But if you get to see a smew, especially a male smew, it's a really special bird to see. Smews nest in tree cavities, just like hooded mergansers do. And they're quite a beautiful diving duck. They dive just like the hooded mergansers do. And as we move in our vans, we're looking for passerines that are perched up, and bull-headed shrike is for sure one that's perched up because they love to sit up high and sit there and hunt. And they're looking for any insects they can find, probably at this time of year, small mammals even. If it's a little warmer, they'll be looking for lizards. And it is a shrike, and you can see by that bill, it's got the sharp bill. And a lot of shrikes are known for impaling their prey on thorns and sort of coming back to get them later. So bull-headed shrike is one of our targets. And the beautiful little rustic bunting, which is nesting further north in Russia, but coming down here to Japan to spend the winter. And it's a beautiful little sparrow-looking bird. Buntings are basically old world sparrows. And it's a seed-eating bird, you can see by the conical bill, and looking very much like our sparrows. And then along wetland areas, you might see Japanese wagtail, which is another little black and white passerine, which likes to forage along wet areas where it can find invertebrates and things lurking. So we're getting all our targets as we go, but we're continuing up further to the northwest to the Snow Monkey Park. We're going to actually head up into a city called Yamanouchi, and you can see the Japanese Alps in the background. This is the view from the lobby of our hotel. It's very beautiful. We're in town, but the surroundings are absolutely gorgeous. And we get treated to one of the many, many multi-course meals known in Japanese dining. It's called a kaseki, and it's a sequence of small dishes. And this woman is telling us what all the dishes are and which order we're supposed to eat them. And there's the little hot pots where we can cook our own food, and it's really very delicious. It's a lot of food, but really a special experience and quite nice. So we get fueled up and get our strength up, get a good night's sleep, because the next morning we're going up into these mountains. And to our delight, there was a fresh snowfall that just sort of freshened everything up, made it not look so sticky, but made it look white and fluffy. And we're going up to Jigokudani, which means the Hell Valley. It sounds like a nice place, doesn't it? But it's called that because of the volcanic activity up there. There's actually hot springs up there. And so we take a little walk about a mile into the forest, and where we're headed for, it's beautiful because the evergreens are snow covered. You know what it's like on a fresh snowfall. We're going to the Snow Monkey Park. And the Snow Monkey Park is world famous. It's where these Japanese macaques, these monkeys, come in and use the hot pools to swim and bathe and kind of spend their time all year round, actually, but this is the winter time. This is the northernmost living monkey. It's quite far north. We're almost as far north as, say, Buffalo, New York. So it's quite far north for a monkey. And these animals, they live in groups of 20 or 30. Usually it's a matriarchal group, so it's led by a female. They're very sociable. Grooming each other is quite important. And they spend their time around these hot pools. And, you know, you can get up close and personal with them. You're not allowed to touch them or anything, but they're all around and they're really close. And these are some families. Here's a female with 3 little ones, which are fairly well grown, swimming around in the hot pools. And this is the first of my videos, so I hope it works. So I don't know what you can hear, but they're screeching to each other. And this is a little one with a female just kind of hanging around with her. They're used to people. They have very expressive faces, but to see the snow monkeys, and they are wild animals, is really a treat. So this may be a male. Males are quite a bit bigger than the females, and this looks like a juvenile one that was just sitting off to the side. And here's a baby, and he's really cute because his fur is all covered with snow. And so he's trying to shake it off. And it's very cute. He kind of loses his balance there. But that's kind of the entertainment when you go into the Snow Monkey Town. And it was a bucket list thing for us to experience. There's a big male there. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's a female. Up close and personal and getting very good pictures of them. So that was one of the major things that we wanted to do, and the whole reason we went up to Karazawa and to see the snow monkeys. So then we head back down toward Karazawa proper, and we find ourselves in this beautiful onsen hotel. And you might have heard that when you stay in some of the traditional hotels in Japan, you're staying on tatama mats on futons on the floor. They don't have beds, but it's a beautiful hotel with a dining room there, very comfortable. And this particular hotel has this gorgeous, huge picture window, and right outside are lots and lots of birds. They have some feeders out there that attract the Japanese pygmy woodpecker. That's kind of akin to our downy woodpecker, but a little more gray in color, not black and white like our downy, but a little tiny thing. And then right at the window, these are pictures taken through the picture window of the varied tit, which is a relative of our chickadee. You might see the resemblance, or the Japanese tit, which looks maybe even more like our chickadee, which has been split from Oriental tit. And so from inside the window, you're getting up close and personal again. This is a Eurasian nuthatch. And these birds, like our nuthatch, are known for taking seeds and sticking them into a tree branch and then sort of pecking them out, hatching them out. And so it's fun to be able to watch them. And one of my favorite Eurasian birds is the long-tailed tit. And in Japan, they're actually more white in color. In England and Europe, they actually are more pinkish in color. But these are beautiful. They match the snow. And they're another relative of the chickadee. You can see it's kind of tiny little thing. He's actually more closely related to the American bush tits in the Southwest. But they have these long tails and they travel around in very vocal groups. And they're really fun to see them working through eating insects and seeds mostly in the forest. There are some larger birds as well, like the pale thrush, and you might see the shape of this bird like our American robin. It's the same genus as the American robin, but called a pale thrush, a fruit eater. So it's finding winter fruits. And then the beautiful dusky thrush, which has that white supercilium and the rufous brownish on the wings, which is actually quite a bit more colorful. And they're outside the window as well, along with the gray-capped greenfinches, which are year-round residents. Some of these other birds are only coming in for the winter. And there's always a jay, and this is Eurasian jay. And Eurasian jay, there's several subspecies, but this particular subspecies in Japan has very dark face. So if you've seen Eurasian jay in other parts of Europe, you'll notice the difference. There's also Eurasian wren, which is like our winter wren. It's been split now, and that's skulking around the ground. There's some water there. There's a little pond, and so it likes the pond edges. And there are feeders, so there are always squirrels. And this is the Japanese squirrel making itself at home in one of the feeders. This is endemic to Japan. This is Japan's special squirrel. It has the cute ear tufts. And it looks, with the ear tufts, maybe a little more like a red squirrel, but the color isn't quite right. The color's brown. They're a little smaller than the gray squirrel, and they're there at the feeders, of course. And then one of the very special birds right outside the window here is the alpine, or Japanese, I should say, assenter. And Japanese assenter is a special bird here. It's a high elevation breeding bird, but it's coming in for the wintering at lower elevations around the water. It switches its diet to seeds in the winter, and so it's looking for seeds among the leaf litter there. And the red eye is diagnostic for this bird. So what's lovely about this hotel, in addition to everything else, is it's right next to this Asama National Wildlife Protection Area, and we can walk from the hotel into this protection area. There's a lovely trail that leads right into it. And we're looking for things along the way, things that don't come to the window, but things like Japanese grosbeak, which you can see where it gets its name. That beak is monstrous, that big yellow bill. Again, this is migratory and a wanderer and not so easy to see, so we're thrilled when we can get a good view. It kind of hides up in the canopy. And so this one happened to just come down long enough for Dave to get a photo of it, Dave Farrow, who is our local guide on this trip. And then red-flanked bluetail, which is an old world flycatcher, which is also migratory and coming down here for the winter. Red-flanked bluetails are Eurasian for sure, but every once in a while in California, they come in the winter. They're a rare bird. And you might remember that there was one that was hanging around last winter, a red-flanked bluetail in New Jersey. So they can be a long way from home. They are migratory, they get blown off course, and if they like a place, they stay there. A very beautiful little red-flanked bluetail, nicely named. Japanese green woodpeckers also in the forest there, and now they're an endemic to Japan, and they are beautifully green, they're sort of olivey and brighter green colors with the red on the head. So that's a nice one to see. And as we walk in the natural area, we see all these nest boxes with big holes in them. And these are for giant flying squirrels, Japanese giant flying squirrels, which they're trying to help them find places to seek shelter and maybe even have their young. We unfortunately didn't see any Japanese flying squirrels, but we got some pictures from some trail cameras, some night vision cameras, and they are massive. You know, it's a 2 to 3 foot wingspan, if you will. They're a big, big animal. There's also a beautiful stream, the U River, YU River, that runs through the area. And parts of it are bigger than this and popular for fly fishing. But it's a place, because of the rushing water, that the brown dipper likes. And you might know of dippers. They're an aquatic passerine bird that hangs out around fast flowing streams and jumps in the water and eats invertebrates from underneath rocks or that stuck to rocks. This is one of the largest of the dippers. There's maybe 6 or 8 species in the world. Brown dipper is the largest. So this was a cool one to get on our list. We drove around the roads from the hotel to look for things in the forests, and we did see copper pheasant, hard to get a picture of, but this is one of the beautiful pheasants of Japan, an endemic. And here's a picture that Dave got of one that we saw along the road. We go out first thing in the morning at sunrise to try to get them before they get scared off into the forest. So that was kind of cool to see that. And also in the forest, we hope to pick up white-backed woodpecker, which is one of the larger woodpeckers, very dark in color with some red underneath, as you can see, and white on the back, which you can't see in this picture. And then we were driving around one morning and we found this Japanese sorrel, which is kind of a mix of an antelope goat sort of thing. But it's one of the national symbols of Japan, and it's a living national treasure of the forest. And so we were really thrilled to get just a glimpse of the Japanese sorrel. Very bushy fur. You can see it's cold there, so they are adapted for the cold. And in several spots, we were able to see the Japanese red fox, which is an absolutely beautiful animal. Another fluffy, furry coat for the cold. This is an endemic subspecies in Japan, so we were thrilled to get some good views of this. We have a couple of pictures of this. But as we finish up in Karazawa, we take the bullet train back to Tokyo and then take a flight south to Kyushu, the 3rd largest island in Japan. And I'll go back to the map so you can see we've gone from up here to Tokyo, now down to Kyushu, the island of Kyushu here, to Kagoshima. And we went down here because there was a very special bird that we wanted to see, which involved going out on a boat in Katagawa Harbor. And you can see now we're far south, so there's green on them there hills. It's not the stick forest that we saw up north. This is probably the same latitude perhaps as maybe Hollywood, Florida, or parts of Texas. So at this time of year, in November, December, or even into February, those hills are green. So it was a little bit warmer for us, even though on the boat we were quite bundled up. And we were just blessed with these gorgeous days. And in the morning we went out into the harbor, not too far out, this very rocky, rugged landscape here. And the great cormorants were seeing us off as they were standing, and slaty-backed gulls were kind of the default gull there. Now, when one of those comes over to the US, it's a rarity, but they're sort of the default gull. And so what we were searching for was a little tiny bird, not too far out in the harbor, and it's a bird that comes into the harbor for the winter. And suddenly we found one. Here's, I've got better pictures, but here's the first sighting of this thing called a crowned sea sparrow, or the real name for it is Japanese murrelet. It's an alcid that spends its time out in the open ocean, but comes in the winter to feed on fish that come into the harbor. And it's also called a crowned sea sparrow. It has a little crest that comes up more when it's breeding, but you might be able to see it there. And it's really small. It's about the size of a bobwhite quail. It's really kind of small, but it's coming in. We're thrilled to see it. We actually saw several there right from the boat, very close. And I've got another video here, which you might be able to see it chasing fish. And if you can see, it's the fish are jumping out ahead of the bird, very quick. And I don't want to make you seasick, so we'll move on to the next picture. A nice close-up picture of this bird, but very special, Japanese murrelet. To get this on our list for any bird watcher is really a treat. And so mission accomplished, we got our target there. So we had some time as we're going back into port, actually, where there were more and more of these. So we got really good views and some good pictures. But since there was time, we actually were able to bird along the coast here, which was very beautiful, very green. And we found things like Darien redstart, which is another old world flycatcher. Start means tail, and so it's a red start, red tail. And they are from the mountainous regions of Russia coming down here to spend the winter. And so they like open forest edges. This was on a railing that was close to the road near one of the pull-offs, and we got really, really good views. And then dusky thrushes around. There seemed to be dusky thrushes around this area. As we moved along some wetland river areas, we were able to see crested kingfisher, which is a large kingfisher with a big shaggy crest that you can see there. And also in the river, we were able to find long-billed plover, which looks maybe a little bit like a killdeer. It's a relative of the killdeer, but very special in this part of Japan. And then other small passerines like the warbling white-eye or the Japanese white-eye, which is feeding on fruit. Again, they are fruit eaters, but one that we want to pick up as we're moving along. Now we're heading up to another very special place near Nagasaki here. And it's a place where we can visit the Izumi Crane Center. Crane Observation Center. And we actually got a chance to actually stay at the Crane Center. It's not an easy place to get into, but you can stay right among the cranes here. So there's a little minshuku, a little place with rooms. And there we are on the tatami mats, sleeping on futons, but right outside our window are tens of thousands of cranes of different types. And so it was really a thrill to wake up in the morning. Well, actually, you heard them all night, but wake up in the morning and see the cranes take off and go to their feeding grounds. And there were many, many, many cranes, thousands and thousands of cranes. So it was really a wildlife spectacle that we had hoped to see. I'll just play another video of what it's like in the morning. And it's not only cranes, you'll see some ducks flying. There were thousands of ducks as well here. And so what this place is rice paddies, so rice fields that once they're harvested, there's a lot of leftover rice, and these birds have learned to come in and make use of the food source. It was first observed that these cranes would come in the winter in the 1600s, but they nearly disappeared by the 1800s. And so now the land has been protected, and by 1895, the birds were back, and the numbers of cranes have been increasing. You can get up close and personal with them. There are places, observation areas, in addition to the observation center, where you can get really close and see. These are hooded cranes and some young hooded cranes, which is by far the most numerous there. And then you can see. And there's so many cranes that you could see that they're doing supplemental feeding now to make sure that the birds have enough food to last them the winter. So the hooded crane is by far the most numerous one. There's probably 10 to 15,000 hooded cranes here. This is a 3-foot crane, mostly gray with a white head, and the hood, I guess, is the red spot on the cap. And cranes are very gregarious. Their interactions with each other, their social interactions are quite important. And so they'll gather in these little groups and throw back their heads and bugle. And there's a couple young ones here, so this was maybe this year's young. But that's what they do, and that's what makes them so entertaining to watch. Now, in addition to the hooded cranes, we have the white-naped cranes, far fewer in number, but they're beautiful to see because they're a little bit taller, 4 feet tall, and they have this gorgeous white neck and red face. So if you can get one out in the field by itself, you can really appreciate the beauty of it. And this is another bird that breeds in Mongolia and Russia and China and is coming into Izumi Crane Center for the winter. So it's an important wintering ground for them. There's a couple of sandhill cranes, lesser sandhill cranes in the mix. Not too many of them. They're not very common there. Maybe they're from Eastern Siberia. Maybe they just get caught up traveling with the other cranes, but they're recognizable ones because they're ones that we get. And then a few common cranes in the mix, or Eurasian cranes, and their range is from Eastern Europe to Siberia. They winter in Africa, so this one might be continuing south to its wintering grounds, but they breed in the boreal forests of Russia and clearings on the ground, and they're known for that bustle that they have on their back end. So there are a few of those around. And then Maureen Walter picked out this demoiselle crane, which is a real rarity among the cranes. So cranes all get together and then the rare ones sort of join in, and it's fun to scan and pick them out because demoiselle crane is really a beautiful bird with those feather plumes on the side of the head and those long feathers on the breast. So Maureen picked out one in 10 or 15,000 birds. It's a pretty good pickup. I just put in the range of the demoiselle crane. So Japan is way over here on the right side of the screen, and the demoiselle crane's breeding range is in Russia here, and they're going down here, nowhere near Japan. So that was quite a lost bird, but it was lost in the right place. You can also go up on top of the crane center and look over the other side where the cranes are gathered and lots of ducks are gathered. And again, it's just crane after crane after crane. And back here, you start to see the ducks. There are a lot of pintails here that you can see. Lots of ducks all around because there's a lot of water nearby. And it really just is a spectacle to see. This is happening all day long. They say you should go early in the morning, but there's activity all day long with these birds moving around. We wanted to note a few of the other non-crane birds, although it looks like a crane. The gray heron, there were a few of those around. And the Darien jackdaws, which are a corvid, they're related to crows, of course. Migratory, it's actually a rare visitor, a winter visitor in Japan. It breeds in Siberia and Mongolia and China. And so a few every year come and hang around the crane center. And then there are always rooks that are watching another corvid, which you might be familiar with that sort of grayish around the bill and face, and they're always animated as well. And in any open water, there are ducks, and more ducks. There are shovelers, there are pintails, there are Eurasian widgeons, a lot of birds for us to scan and try to find some of the rarities. So we're always looking at the ducks. And then if you're really lucky, you find the endemic Japanese green pheasant, which is the national bird of Japan. It looks like a pheasant you might see. You might have seen the Chinese pheasants or the ringneck pheasants that we can sometimes see in Connecticut, but it has that beautiful green front. So that's the Japanese green pheasant. And one really little one that's hard to see, if you go to where there are marsh grasses, you might be able to see the Chinese penduline tit. It's a little songbird of fields and wetlands and likes reed beds. And they can form large flocks in the winter. And so this is one that we were able to track down. And then also Japanese skylark, which is another sparrowy looking bird. They're actually eaten in Japan, but here maybe they're a little bit protected. And later in the season, as it gets into spring, they start doing their flight displays before they get back to breeding. And then meadow buntings, which are another sparrowy type bird that just like to sit up on top and show really well. So we like the meadow buntings. And just like everywhere else in Japan, there were these amazing feasts that they gave us, all the little dishes. I do not want to be a dishwasher in Japan because each meal that you have, there's probably 15 to 20 dishes that you've used. But it was all delicious. And right outside, as I mentioned, right outside the window where we were staying are the cranes. So it's a fantastic, fantastic place. Always being distracted by scenes out the window. We birded up along the coast here, a couple of hours north of this area. There are some special birds to see, including the black-faced spoonbill, which is one of the most range restricted of all the spoonbill species. It has that spatulate bill, which you might recognize if you've seen roseate spoonbill. And they sweep that bill along side to side to find food by touch. And so to see the black-faced spoonbill was a really, really special thing. And they're looking beautiful with their reflections. Gulls, because we're on the coast. This is glaucous-winged gulls. We're everywhere. But there was a particular type of gull that we were looking for, which breeds in China and comes here to Japan in the winter. It's called a Saunders gull. Some people call it Chinese black-headed gull, but it's a little gull, very similar to little gull actually, which is a little bit about half the size perhaps of that glaucous wing gull. And they feed on crabs in the mudflats. And so this place where we went was a very special place where they seem to gather in the winter, but up to 2,000 of them wintering in Japan around the coast. And so this was special. They are apparently kleptoparasites. They steal food from each other and from other birds. And so we did actually witness that with a few of them. And then we're always looking to see what birds are along the coastal waters. And this one caught our attention. This is a Baikal teal. And we didn't get a close-up picture, so I borrowed this picture from Carlos. But this is a bird that breeds in Lake Baikal or near Lake Baikal in eastern Russia. And every once in a while, a rare one finds its way down to Japan. And we were able to see that. So that was fabulous. And also there were lots of falcated ducks, which are relatives of our gadwall, which also breed in Russia, are strongly migratory, so are coming down to Japan for the winter, but very pretty with the green on the head, green and brown heads, very gorgeous birds. And we worked our way along some freshwater rivers, again, finding the crested kingfisher again, and the long-billed plover. So it was nice to get more views of that. So when we're finished here, we take our JAL flight now back north to Tokyo and then up to Hokkaido, way up here in the north. And I want to point out, if you can see the top of the map here, these islands up here, which Russia and Japan sort of argue over who they belong to, and we got a close view of those. But now we're up in real winter, real alpine habitat in northern Japan, in Hokkaido. And Hokkaido is the second largest island. The northernmost is the same latitude as, say, Toronto, or north, even north of that. And we want to come up here for some very special birds. So we get a good night's sleep, and then first thing the next morning at sunrise, we're out on this bridge over the Setsuri River to see the red-crowned cranes that are waking up and starting to bugle. They spend the night sort of in the river, and they're starting to wake up, and it's just a beautiful scene with the mist to get a look at these birds first thing in the morning. And so that's one of the experiences that you want when you go up to Hokkaido, this group of birds illuminated with the first rays of sun. From there, we walk forest trail into places where we can see Ural owl. See this area here? I have a close-up view. Beautiful owl related to our barred owl. It's the same genus as barred owl with different angled stripes. But Ural owls love to be in tree cavities, and especially first thing in the morning when it's cold, just loving that morning sunlight. And so this is one, if you see other people who've gone to Japan on birding trips and they went here, these same owls get photographed a lot, sometimes 2 and 3 in the hole. And then later on in the morning, the cranes have moved now to an old dairy farm. Well, it's not an old dairy farm, it's a working dairy farm. But in the winter, they allow the cranes to come in and forage in the open there and do their dances. So the red-crowned cranes now have made their way onto this dairy farm where they're starting to, again, interact with each other. And you can get beautiful pictures of them against the snow. You can see them feeding. You can see them bugling together. And these are the red-crowned cranes of Japan. These are enormous cranes, very beautiful with that black tail. And it's just a thrill to see them. And let's see if the video. So they jump and they dance and they bugle. And they talk to each other, and all of this social action is very important to the cranes. They're very gregarious. And so they've set up a fence where we can all watch and photograph from a safe distance while the cranes do their thing. And it's really a special, special experience. We also spend some time on the Natsuki Peninsula, and this is a peninsula here where we can do some birding. And out here are those islands that Russia and Japan both claim. So we get, here they are in the distance. So we go along the sand spit. It reminds me of Cape Cod beaches or even Hammonasset Beach, but way, way colder. And it sticks out into the ocean. There's enough land there for sika deer to live. And this is a huge deer. You can see how big it is with the big antlers that they grow when they're well fed. And so they definitely are well fed. This is the male, and the females are a little bit smaller. But they come together and feed out here on the dried grasses in winter. And another fox looking beautiful against the snow-covered ground. But here in the winter come the Steller sea eagles, and they're coming down to fish, because this is right on the coast, of course. So they're sitting up on telephone poles and electrical poles, and you can get up close and personal with the sea eagle. And if you zoom in, you can even get a real close up with its face. They are not shy. They're another national treasure of Japan. And they're just there to be enjoyed. It's incredible to get this close to these birds. Now, we were there in the Natsuki Peninsula twice. Once was that beautiful sunny day. Another day was like this. So it can be a little bit influenced by the marine environment and a little bit foggy, but that's okay. When it's like this, it's actually beautifully stunning and cold. And on the interior of the bay, there are people ice fishing. And so there are fish in the waters on the inside. And here we are, cold and bundled up, but really happy with the things that we've seen. There are, of course, gulls. There's glaucous gull and the default slaty-backed gulls. And even snow buntings. There are snow buntings here. But with the snow buntings, we're looking for another very special bird, which is the Asian rosy finch. Excuse me. Now, there are, I think, 4 species of rosy finches in the world. 3 of them we have in North America, but this one you have to go to Asia for. And so we were able to find them on both trips. And you see where they get their name. They have the beautiful rose color in the feathers there. And they act like snow buntings, and they move with the snow buntings, feeding on seeds on the ground and grit. And Steve was able to snap this picture of one in flight, which was really beautiful. Offshore, we were able to see the Stejniger's scoters, which look like white-winged scoters, and they're a new species now. But we didn't get a good picture, so I grabbed this one off of eBird. It's like a white-winged scoter, a little bit different on the bill, kind of a funky-looking bill structure there. But that's one of the specialties offshore there as well. And then we headed up Rasu to another Minshuku, which was up into one of these valleys in the mountains, and another very special place. We stayed in this Minshuku, which looks like it's being held down, probably was being held down by ropes, so it didn't blow away, because we're in the dead of winter now. But this is a great place because you stay in this building, very comfortable. It's a Minshuku, so you're on the ground on futons. But there are all these windows in the rooms, and the windows are overlooking this little river where they've built a little bit of a pool, and they stock that pool with fish so that you can see the Blakiston's fish owl come in and feed. And this is a massive owl. It's a big species of eagle owl, and it is a fishing owl. And if you notice this bird, it doesn't have the facial discs like some of the owls we're familiar with, because it doesn't hunt by sound, it hunts by sight, right? Because you can't really hear fish under the water. Now, some of you may have read Owls of the Eastern Ice by Jonathan Slott, and he was doing work with Blakiston's fish owl in Russia. It's quite a good book. They should make this one into a movie. But there are also Blakiston's fish owls in Japan, and there's work being done here, conservation work being done as well. Because these birds are being affected by the loss of forests. They have very specific habitat needs. They need forest with open running streams so that they can find their fish. And you sit in the Minshuku and just watch them do their thing. They're massive, as you can see. They're very intent on catching fish. They're very good at it, actually. And so it's really fun to get to see them. And you can see that some of them have bands on their legs, so they are being studied, which is important, and they are being protected. And coming to a place like this, we're adding to the protection of them, because we are supporting the place that houses people who want to see this beautiful bird. So there is a dining room as well, where you have windows and you can look out over the river where the birds come in, and of course enjoy your multi-dish Japanese meal. Really amazing, under the care of this lovely lady who's very happy to make us happy. So it's fantastic up here. Now, after a night or two of owl watching, we also want to spend some time down on the coast. And we are right near the coast here, and it's very beautiful, very cold. And there are a lot of birds in the harbors, in the various fishing harbors, things like the whooper swan, which is another winter visitor in Japan, breeds in Scandinavia to Russia and comes down for the open water in winter. So to see those is very special. And then some of the birds that we recognize, birds that we will have here in the winter, things like common merganser. But these pictures are amazing because these birds are right in the harbor, right up close, allowing incredible views and photography. Black scoter and the beautiful red-breasted mergansers that are showing up here along our coast now for the winter. Long-tailed ducks, which we also get here, and then harlequin ducks, which we don't get here very often, but you can go to Rhode Island and see harlequin ducks in the winter here. And then, of course, more gulls, Kamchatka gull, and Thayer's gull, and people can argue, birders can argue about what kind of gulls they are, but you can always go back and find a slaty-backed gull, and that, you know, it's like our great black-backed gull, but this is the default gull. So we're here in the harbor, and we're going to get on a boat again, and we're going to go offshore. It's beautiful, another beautiful day, thank God. And we're going to go to where the sea ice is actually coming into the harbor, right on the edge of the sea ice, floating in. And this happens in mid-February. If you go any earlier than this, you risk missing the sea ice. And you don't want to miss the sea ice because we pull right up along the edge of the sea ice, and the guys on the boat throw fish out, and the Steller sea eagles and the white-tailed eagles come in to eat the fish. And talk about up close and personal with a beautiful snow ice background. These are Steller sea eagles coming in to take advantage of a free meal for the tourists. And this is the kind of views that you get, even with my small little camera, full frame of Steller sea eagle, which is an apex predator, but it will take a free meal if offered. I mean, this is an incredible, incredible bird. And we're having the time of our lives taking pictures of them and watching their antics as they interact with each other. Steller sea eagle and white-tailed eagle, which is one that's very closely related to our American bald eagle. Excuse me, I'm running out of voice here. And there was even a bald eagle there apparently, but we weren't able to see it. Thank you. But white-tailed eagles are beautiful in their own right. And a good photographer like Steve will get pictures of these birds in flight, which are stunning because they're flying all around us. And then contorting their body in flight, trying to get down and get the fish before another bird gets them. So it really is a spectacle to see these birds on the ice by the hundreds. So when the Steller sea eagle showed up in eastern Canada, actually in Massachusetts, and I think it's still somewhere in Newfoundland, we didn't actually go to see it because we had seen hundreds of Steller sea eagles in Japan. Now there's always a crow, isn't there? So large-billed crow, which is a common bird all throughout where we have traveled, but coming in for food scraps. And the white-tailed eagle isn't sure about that, whether it wants to share. But you can see this one has a full crop, so it's had its share. It's going to go and rest now. So this is sort of how we end up our trip, watching this spectacle of the Steller sea eagles and the white-tailed eagles off of Hokkaido. And then as we pull away, the gulls just following us, trying to catch up with us, thinking maybe we have more food. So there we are, winter in Japan. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. There's a lot to see in the winter. I think there's a lot to see in the spring, and I hope to get there again in the spring. I want to thank some people for sharing their pictures. Steve, Dave, Keith Langdon, and Patty Morris. Thank you so much for your pictures. Excuse me. If you want to see our trip reports for these trips, you can go to our trip report pages. These are the current ones, but if you scroll down, you'll find the ones for Japan. The 2017 report, which has more videos, and also our 2020 trip right before the pandemic. We were able to get that trip in, which was great. And then Birds, Wildlife, and Nature, which just did their trip in January of this year, and we'll be doing one next year and the year after. If you're interested in joining, I can tell you how to get a hold of them and have these experiences for yourself. I think the 2025 trip is already full, but the 26 trip is open. That's Birds, Wildlife, and Nature. So thank you so much. Arigato zaimashita. Thank you so much for being here. I want to wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving, and I hope you enjoyed the talk. And maybe Maybe people have questions. I'll stop sharing.
I have a question right off.
Okay.
You kept saying it was cold. It's cold. It's cold. How cold was cold?
Um, uh, on the coldest cold snap here in Connecticut, it was like that. But you know how cold is. If it's damp, it's colder. And if it's windy, it's colder. So I was able to survive on my winter jacket that I wear here in Connecticut, and my hand warmers, which I live on in the winter here. So, I've been to up into the Himalayas, and for that we rented expedition gear. You didn't need that for here. It was just cold, wintry, like if you went to southern Canada for in the winter, or here in the coldest cold snaps.
So, like if you went to Hamo on a cold, cold winter day.
Yes, an
Okay.
icy wind hamo day. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anybody have any questions?
Oh, Lauren has a question. For the species that breed in Russia and China and winter in Japan, are they protected there? That's a really good question. And I am not sure. I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I feel like I do probably know the answer, and I don't want to know the answer. You'd have to look up each species, but there's a lot of hunting. I know with the Blakiston's fish owl, the problem there in Russia is they're cutting the forest, they're logging, and this is affecting the habitats of the owls. So Jonathan Slott was there to try and determine where these birds were breeding so he could try and convince them to protect some of those forests for those birds. But that's a really good question. Chris is saying she didn't notice any geese mixed with the cranes and ducks in the rice fields. There may have been gray lag geese, and there were a few geese species, but not as many as ducks and cranes. That's a good, interesting that you pointed that out. That's a good point. Are there other questions in the chat?
That was it for questions, I think. Anybody else?
Nicole, another great program. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
the Steller sea eagle, the last one of the first set, was staring right at you. Make a great poster.
They were, they put the boat right at the sea ice edge, and they're throwing the fish from the boat, so they're close to the boat. So, and they don't really care about us. They're just in there for the free meal. So it's amazing. It's really an amazing experience to get that close to them.
Last call for questions.
So how soon can we sign you up for your Bolivia trip?
Oh, Bolivia. We're going to need a rest from Bolivia. It's fabulous. It was a long trip. It was almost 4 weeks. So I think we're still recovering. Still recovering. But I did get inspired by one bird in Bolivia, the Titicaca grebe, to put together a new talk. So I can let you know when that new talk comes together, if in case you're interested, because
We'll be
that was
checking
some
in with
kind
you.
of special bird.
What do you mean, in case we're interested?
Well, the only thing that slows me down is it takes a long time to put together a talk. So,
Yeah.
but I'm
Well-
inspired by the Titicaca grebe to put a new talk together. So
When it's done, send us an email.
I will. I will.
Gina, thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
As always, spectacular presentation.
Well, thank you. Thanks for asking. Thanks for asking me back. I'm happy to
course.
be asked back. And happy to relive these trips. That's what I get to do when I do these talks.
Yeah. And thanks everybody for tuning in, and check the website for the upcoming programs, and have a happy Thanksgiving. Take care.
You too. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.